the SoCal Insider. I'm Rick Reef. Well, love him or hate him, in Orange County government, it's been hard to ignore John Moorlach. Back in 1994, his warnings about the county's risky investments were ignored. That is until the county went bankrupt, the biggest municipal failure ever at the time, and that catapulted Moorlach into an eventful political career. Now, after 20 years of crusading against government waste and cronyism, Moorlach's calling it quits. He's here to tell us why in the look back at battles won and lost. But first, the state of California takes on Chromium-6. It's been linked to causing cancer if you breathe too much of it or drink too much of it in your water. David Nazar, what's the story?
Rick, state officials have just established new regulations over how much hexavalent chromium, or Chromium-6 as it's known, can be in our drinking water. The California Department of Public Health, in collaboration with other agencies, spent years researching this issue and listening to almost 20,000 public comments. Now, the state's Office of Administrative Law has approved the new regulations to take effect this July. Anytime anyone just says the word hexavalent chromium or Chromium-6, it seems to sound an alarm. Many of us got familiarized with the term chromium back in 2000 with the Hollywood blockbuster film Erin Brockovich, a dramatization based on the true story of a single mom portrayed by Julia Roberts, who took on the energy corporation Pacific Gas and Electric in the Mojave Desert town of Hinckley, California. Brockovich uncovered that PG&E was contaminating the town's groundwater with a carcinogen it had been using for decades called hexavalent chromium. That case ultimately led to a $330 million settlement against PG&E for more than 600 plaintiffs. Simply put, Chromium-6 is a very cheap and effective chemical used to prevent rust and corrosion on machinery and chrome parts. It's routinely used in the aerospace and defense industries and in cooling towers or at power plants, for example. Scientists have determined that this excellent anti-rust chemical, if used in excess, can seep into the air and groundwater, causing severe bodily harm. Ever since the real-life Brockovich began her battle some 20 years ago to get hexavalent chromium out of our drinking water, various scientists, water industry officials, regulatory agencies, and lawmakers have joined in. So fast forward to today, where the California Department of Public Health has announced new regulations establishing the first-in-the-nation drinking water standard for hexavalent chromium. The new standard, called a maximum contaminant level, or MCL, has been set at 10 parts per billion gallons of water. Erin Brockovich says it's about time, even though she and other activists and environmentalists were hoping for the public health goal, which was set at an almost undetectable 0.02 parts per billion.
This is 20 years that we have fought to get a chemical that's been widely used, that we clearly know by lots of science and studies is very dangerous by inhalation. And studies, and even the state shows it, and other studies, that by ingestion, and if you want to go to the laboratory rats, it causes liver cancer and kidney cancer that is rampant in water supplies.
There are still many folks out there who say, look, the science isn't in, Chromium-6 is not a health hazard.
Well, for all those naysayers, I guess you're calling a whole lot of experts around the world stupid. I guess you're probably calling the state of California stupid, because what, they've now set a MCL for a chemical based on what? No data? No information? I mean, that's laughable.
Brett Barbary agrees hexavalent chromium is no laughing matter. However, Barbary disagrees with Brockovich because he claims the science on the dangers of Chrom-6 is not there yet. Barbary is an elected board member of the Municipal Water District of Orange County and an appointed board member of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California in Los Angeles. Barbary has been in the water policy business, well, for almost as long as Brockovich has been on her chromium crusade.
Many times, if Hollywood seizes onto a story and they drive up public awareness, it'll drive a hysteria, and they think, well, we have to respond to this right away. And they want to get out, policymakers want to get out in front and fix things, and we all want to fix things and make sure everything is safe. Certainly the water supply needs to be safe, but we really need to wait for the science.
So if you say the science isn't in yet, why is the state of California adopting the new regulation? Why are these activists on the rooftops screaming about the dangers of Chromium-6?
They may have a little science here, a little science there, but the complete studies, I don't think, have been completed. And we really wait to see what the feds do. And if that were the case, then I think you'd see the federal EPA would be acting on this, and they have not. We've come so far water quality-wise where we can detect things down to parts per billion and parts per trillion. Give an example, parts per billion would be take a football field and pull one blade of grass. That's a part per billion. Parts per trillion, fill up the Rose Bowl with water and put in 10 drops. That's parts per trillion. So you're dealing with very, very minute amounts.
I'm not surprised that they're taking this position because A, it's going to cost more. But it's better to spend that money up front to have assurances down the road that you in fact don't have a hexavalent chromium problem.
Brockovich is correct when she says various water officials around the state are concerned about the cost of complying with the new Chromium-6 regulations.
One major district out in the Coachella Valley, it's a naturally occurring, Chromium-6 is naturally occurring out there. And in outlying districts like that or in small rural districts, they may not even have the money to do the actual treatment that's required, let alone construct a facility to treat it, let alone have the qualified staff to operate and provide the ongoing O&M. So you really have to look at the cost benefit there.
Yet with that said, does the cost of, let's say, replumbing an entire water district trump the fact that Chromium-6 can be dangerous and hazardous to folks' health?
Out in the desert or out in the hinterlands where it's just naturally occurring, this becomes very, very problematic.
Brockovich says, sure, this is problematic. It's a problem, she says, for everyone around the world who could get sick and possibly even die from ingestion of excessive levels of hexavalent chrome.
This is a chemical that I've had reports and I work on that isn't only an issue to the state of California or the United States of America. It has problems in Australia, Ireland, Greece, France, Italy, South Africa, Canada. This is a world problem and a chemical that needs to have some type of regulation in drinking water.
You've heard this argument over the years that you're a shill for the trial attorneys, that you're just doing all of this to sue big companies. And in fact, some even say in Hinckley, where this all began, there were no more serious health hazards with folks than there are anywhere else in the United States.
I'm out here trying to champion clean water and the protection of the public health and welfare. If there's a lawsuit that results of this, that's your problem, Mr. Polluter. And of course I expect you to take that position that you're going to want me to go away.
Well, Erin Brockovich is certainly not going away anytime soon. And opponents of these new regulations, well, they're not going away just yet either. A big trade group, the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, along with the Solano County Taxpayers Association, have sued to overturn the new drinking water standard. Rick, both groups say it ignores the scientific evidence and fails to take into account, as required by law, the economic impacts of the new regs.
You know, David, we're all for health and safety. But this is just another exhibit that you can use when people talk about why jobs are leaving the state of California, about the business unfriendly atmosphere in California. You know, let's as I said, everybody's for health and safety. Let's have some fiscal sanity, though, about this. For instance, you know, to refer to what Brett Barbary was saying, here's the federal government. The EPA says it's safe to have this Chromium-6 at 100 parts per billion, okay? State of California's been right here, much more stringent, 50 parts per billion. Brett referred to naturally occurring Chromium-6, that there's no evidence of health harm, is at 20 parts per billion. So now the state of California is going to take it to 10. So if you have 20, which some of these rural areas do and things, you're going to either retrofit, as you said in your report, or you're going to have to import water in order to dilute the Chromium-6, and that's going to cost money. You know, I see just a few more jobs drifting off to Texas.
You make a sound argument. Obviously, California is probably the most unfriendly business state in the nation. There's no question. And environmentalists and some sects of California rule the roost? Certainly. However, with that said, maybe it's better to err on the side of caution. Look, folks took lead out of paint, lead out of water, lead out of the air. It took people like Erin Brockovich and other consumer advocates and activists to get this done. So if it means that we are sure that Chromium-6 needs to get out of our water for us to be safe, I don't see a problem with that. But we have to find a balance, Rick, to get the chromium out, but not to kill these business folk at the same time.
You know, and David, that's the argument that always trumps the sanity, and that's why we get laws like this, these unreasonable regulation levels, because here I am playing defense. I'm arguing dollars and cents, and you know, Erin Brockovich and other proponents are arguing clean water, you know, health and safety, save the environment, and so it's a no-win argument, and that's why we get these regulations, in my opinion. Anyway, David, now you found out as you were working on this story, interestingly, almost nobody wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, you know, Rick, it's been pretty much a wall of silence from all sides. So thanks all the more to Erin Brockovich and Brett Barbary for really having the courage to speak out on camera, no matter which side they're on, obviously. FYI, I made numerous calls to state public health and EPA officials and environmental groups like the NRDC, tons of water agencies throughout Southern California, et cetera. Rick, we never even heard back from the Manufacturers Association. They're the folks that filed the lawsuit. Now, I should point out, I did submit written questions to both the California Department of Public Health and the U.S. EPA. Really nothing in their responses, a lot of legalese, mumbo jumbo. Although, one interesting comment from the State Health Department, I'll know you'll like this one. I'm told more regulations are on the way, and they said, quote, new and emerging contaminants that are currently unregulated may be subject to future regulation in drinking water.
Parts per billion, got to be a lot more regulations coming. Anyway, you know, David, let me hazard a guess as to why people didn't want to comment. The manufacturers just don't want the publicity, again, for that reason. The manufacturers think it's a bad law, but they don't want everybody saying you're trying to destroy people's health and all that, so they want to keep a lid on it. The water districts, end of the day, are going to pass the cost on to the customers, so no big deal. And the regulators got their way, so why upset the apple cart? That's my opinion on why nobody is talking about a rather significant piece of legislation. Anyway, thank you, David. And now, an exit interview with the guy who 20 years ago called the Orange County bankruptcy and has spent the years since fighting against other reckless government spending, making many friends and a few powerful enemies in the process. Joining me, Orange County Supervisor John Moorlach. John, always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Rick. Great to be here.
Just for folks who may not be familiar with you, your reputation is that you're a reformer. You're a leading expert in municipal finance. Other treasurers around the country call you for advice whenever the New York Times or other publications are doing stories about a Detroit failure or something else. You're the guy frequently that they call to get opinions. So many years ago you warned about this bankruptcy. Everybody said you were out of place, you were causing trouble, stirring a hornet's nest, and lo and behold, it came true just a few months later. You became the treasurer, and then instead of staying in a job, you'd been reelected twice, could have been there forever, you know, but great job. You took a pay cut to run for supervisor, and now you're termed out. So why aren't you running again? For some office. Why aren't you running for, there's a congressional seat open, why aren't you running for something?
Thank you, Rick. I've had 20 years, which is really great for someone who came out of the private sector as a partner in a CPA firm. A lot longer than perhaps I thought I would be an elected official. I did look at some options, certainly had plenty of them to look at, from governor down to state assembly or auditor controller. Certainly looked at running for the 45th congressional district and actually open an account and move forward. Had some issues where I kind of slowed down a little bit because my granddaughter was moving to Wisconsin. I wanted to focus on family time. But the final analysis was that I'm more of a policy wonk than a candidate type elected official. I spend more of my time on issues and research and doing the job as opposed to making the phone calls and allocating hours of time to be a candidate. So I was not doing a good job, I would say, in the candidate role because I made doing my primary job my priority. And so I just decided to back out, and now I'm kind of looking forward to getting back to real life.
Some folks, including me, would say that's an indictment of the political system. The one thing as a office holder that I think you were pretty lousy at was raising money. You were not a fundraiser. You're not a guy that raised a lot of money. And in a congressional race, you need that. I think that's what you're partially alluding to, is that you didn't have the money. You're a policy wonk. People say they want...
I would like rebut, because I've watched people in my industry. And so you've got like Gray Davis, who spent every morning making phone calls. It was a great fundraiser. But he was a lousy policymaker.
Yeah, that's what
and we recalled him. So it kind of gets back to your prior story. What is the balance? Where do we have too much of one or the other? So if an elected official has to spend so much time raising money and so much time doing his job, I decided I wanted to spend more time doing my job, hoping that supporters would recognize that, hey, you've got somebody who's really doing the job as opposed to just grandstanding or just doing things to get his name in the paper for whatever reason, but someone who's actually getting things accomplished. And that wave of support didn't come up either. So, where the balance is, I don't know, but I take it as a compliment that I'm a bad fundraiser.
and I meant it that way when I said it, but sometimes I think, the voters say they want people that stick with issues, and a guy like you, in a perfect world, I think you'd be running for governor, but it's not a perfect world.
Let's just chop this place up into 6 pieces, and I'll take one of them.
Okay. That worked pretty well. Let me ask you, what do you think the biggest problem is facing the state of California?
Oh, it's got one of the worst financial statements in the nation. You and I have talked metrics, but I use a metric to try and determine the fiscal well-being of a municipality. The state of California places 46th out of 50. So we have to thank Connecticut, New Jersey, Illinois, and Massachusetts that we're not in last place. But we've got to do some incredible debt pay down, and we've got to do it quickly. Fortunately, at least Governor Brown gets it.
Yeah, and we hear now, Governor Brown gets it, and the economy's coming back. Budget's in much better shape.
We're certainly riding an incredible little slow recovery. We've got the Dow at 17,000 approximately, but that almost puts you at a point where you need to be real concerned because cycles happen. So the Dow could drop dramatically. You could have major losses in your pension plan. Interest rates could rise. You could have major losses in your bond portfolio. And we're back to having massive unfunded liabilities again because we weren't paying in prudently all along. So we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, but we certainly have to build some disciplines with our finances, more than just a rainy day fund.
Okay. You warned about the bankruptcy, and you also warned then a few years later about an emerging problem at a time when nobody else was talking about it, and that was these unfunded pension liabilities, the rising cost to government of taking care of all these obligations that have been made to retired employees. Or to employees' future retirements. That brought you into a lot of conflict with unions. Talk about that.
Well, the Government Accounting Standards Board has not required governments to put unfunded liabilities on their balance sheet. So if it's in the shadows, you can play with it. If you don't have to say to an elected official, hey, if we go from 2% at 50 to 3% at 50, which is a formula that's used to determine pension benefits at retirement, 2% times the number of years you've worked for the government times your final salary, it goes up 50%. Right. And if you say, hey, it's retroactive to the date of hire, it creates a 50% increase in your debt. But no one says, here, you're picking up this massive debt. They don't get that information when they make the votes. So you can manipulate things, and I would say that a lot of elected officials were manipulated, thinking everything was fine because, hey, back then there was another stock market that was doing really well.
Let me ask you. You were a leading. I want to get into the politics of it. When Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Republican, became governor, did he ever call you and say, John, I want your help on pensions?
No. Arnold and I never really communicated. He came out for a fire once and barely shook my hand. Even the Assembly Republicans, when they met with him in a closed room, they'd have to wear name tags. He was a very independent solo flyer. I have a better relationship with Jerry Brown. We're on a first-name basis, have fun debates.
And he talks to you about pensions?
Grudgingly.
Okay.
But yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So that's, there was...
And his pension reform included a lot of components that I've been, promulgating for a long time.
So maybe you have made some difference.
Oh, I believe I have. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You, among those you have taken on, I've seen no other politician do this, are judges. Nobody wants to take on judges. But you at one point actually said that judges were making rulings on pensions in their own self-interest, that they had a conflict of interest. You are essentially saying that judges were corrupt. I think that's an extension of what you're saying. Did you ever get any blowback on that?
No, not that I'm aware of. But there are a lot of others that have written articles subsequent to my comments that have said, yeah, there is a definite conflict of interest here. It's a little awkward when the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court has a husband who's a retired sergeant from the police department. It's just an awkward thing to explain.
Nobody else says those kinds of things, John. You know. Anyway,
but it's true.
Okay.
You know.
Well,
so you can infer what you want, but these judges. I mean, there was the very argument that they made at the appellate court level. They hired a retired appellate court judge and said, "I can explain this. They're talking about your pension. They're talking about mine." And she sat down. No citations. No nothing. And then the judges ruled that it was not a debt. It was an estimate. I mean, that is egregious.
Yeah. In Orange County, there's a public corruption probe going on, or so we're told. There were some reports a year ago the FBI was looking at corruption in Orange County. What do you think of that?
Well, it seems to be all in secret, so I don't know what is going on, Rick. We hear rumors of an FBI, DA task force. We see the grand jury now the second time in a row saying we need to have some kind of ethics commission. Somebody knows something that I don't know. I haven't been interviewed. I haven't been talked to by anyone from the FBI or the district attorney's office. I don't know what.
Does that concern you? Maybe that you're a target?
No, I'm not worried at all. No, I think I've been pretty up to snuff on what's required. I've tried to be the elected official that I would want other elected officials to be. I wanted to be someone that wouldn't embarrass my family or anyone else. That I've tried to, everything I've said, even though I've been blown off, has been rather accurate. I would think, everyone says, why are you saying that? And then they realize a few years later, oh, that's why he's saying it. Now look at the mess we're in. I think when I return your calls, when you or take
no
them.
public official I've ever encountered is more accessible than you. Let me ask you, as you're now leaving office, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of government and politics in California?
I'm actually pessimistic. The federal government is at 17 trillion plus, plus their unfunded liabilities. The state is in really poor shape. The County of Orange, as much as we try, we're at $5.5 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. We've made some strides. We've hemmed in our retiree medical, but it's still a tough gig. And as we said at the beginning of our conversation, you get more people that are more interested in being elected than doing the job. So I see a lot of my colleagues in elected positions that it's really hard to step back and say, what have they accomplished? What have they? What initiatives have they taken on?
Thank you, John. Well, anyways, it's been a pleasure to watch you, and I can tell you the fixers, the cronies, the spinners are going to celebrate when you leave at the end of the year. Unfortunately. Anyway, thanks for coming on. You can watch this show and past shows at rickreef.com. Segments of the show can also be viewed at pbssocal.org. My guest has been John Moorlach, and a special thanks to Erin Brockovich and Brett Barbary. And of course, thank you for watching. We'll see you again on SoCal Insider.
SoCal Insider with Rick Reef is brought to you by the following. 5 Point Communities is a proud sponsor of PBS SoCal. 5 Point Communities is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. More information available at www.fivepointcommunities.com. Snell and Wilmer is a full-service business law firm with more than 400 attorneys practicing throughout the West and in Mexico. With offices in Los Angeles and Orange County, Snell and Wilmer celebrates 25 years in Southern California. Online at swlaw.com. Skits. In our technology-driven world where constant connection to electronic devices is a way of life, Skits tech cases keep your electronic cords and accessories portable and organized so you can stay connected. For more information, visit skitsproducts.com.
A healthy future for you, your family, and your business is why Memorial Care Health System transformed healthcare. Our hospitals, physicians, and outpatient centers keep patients healthy and care for them when they're not. Memorial Care, one healthcare system leading the way.
Our innovations in medical imaging are mapping the future of healthcare. When we started, I believed we could compete with these giants in this industry. City National believes in ICRCO, and that's what makes the relationship work. City National is the way up for our business.